welcome, Miss Laurie. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that I got to meet you. I heard about you for well over a year from our friend Marilyn, and then I heard some more of you from our friend Wayne, and we finally met, and I'm telling you, the stuff that you uncover and how you go after these people is absolutely brilliant and priceless, and I have to say thank you for being a patriotic American. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And, I became one sort of in the most unsuspecting and expecting way.
Mhm.
You go through life, and I ran for school board when I was 32. I was in a small New Hampshire town. I served for about 7 years between a school board and selectmen's board. And then I got busy raising my kids. I homeschooled them, two sons. And then we moved to Nashua because my husband had a company down in Massachusetts and we wanted to shorten the commute. And he grew up here. His family came from a bigger family of 6 kids and lived here his whole life until he went to college and joined the Navy. So back to Nashua we came. And when we got here in 2013, right, beginning of 2014, my taxes exploded. So we bought the house, and then all of a sudden within like a month, a new tax statement was issued to us to let us know that in July, our bill would be going up $5,000, which was huge. And so that sort of kicked it off. And for people who aren't from New Hampshire has, I think, the 3rd highest tax rate in the nation. We rely property tax rate. We rely heavily on our property taxes because we don't have a sales or an income tax. So property is what fuels our revenue stream for our cities and towns. So, if you're a property owner, you're very cognizant of what you're paying and trying to control your budgets and your spending to keep that in check for everyone, from young families to senior citizens. The whole taxation and property tax issue is a real critical issue for everyone. So when that happened in 2014, I told my husband, well, this is just messed up. And I had the assessor come over. He walked around the house. He told me that things were not on the property card when he looked at the sales information online, and that caused it to go up. And I challenged him and said, well, I'm on a street of nice houses. All these other really nice homes are assessed at half the value. How can that be? He just said, no, it's the way it is. So by 2017, I got a tax bill and I had crossed $18,000 on my house. I was furious.
Oh my God.
It had gone up a lot. And I called the chief in the assessing office in City Hall. And I said, hey, here's the story. He was the most rude public servant I had ever talked to. He was angry. He said, you bought it, you own it. You have to pay those taxes. I said, well, it doesn't appear anyone in my neighborhood is anywhere near the level I'm paying. So I said, I don't even think you're capturing permits that are being done. People are doing all kinds of permit work over years. Nobody seems to come and check them. They get that unassessed. What's the deal? So I said to him, I'm going to be watching you. That's what I said. He was so obnoxious. I said, I am going to be watching you. Wow. So the next year, the new numbers came out and we had this mass. So they did a reevaluation and they produced all new assessments to equalize them for the city. So that, generated a huge cache of data, right? And so my husband and I are both engineers. So the spreadsheets go up and the data goes up in the fall, like September of 2018. And we sit down and we start looking at it. And we realized that over a 5-year period, we had overpaid about $25,000 in our taxes. We had been overassessed that high compared to our neighbors. And we were furious. So that started the process of trying to correct it. And the big find was not far down the street, 2 blocks down, was a brick hip roof house like ours that had almost the identical footprint, was within 100 square feet of our home. It had burned in a fire, and a contractor, a vice president, purchased it and rebuilt the whole home on the inside. So it was gorgeous. And I went and pulled his property card, and his taxes were, $8,000 and mine were $18,000.
And his is brand new, top of the line.
And our house is 100-year-old, authentic, original home with the original wiring, the original plumbing, cast iron. It's restored, everything is to the period of 100 years ago, 1925. But,
Right.
And it's, no wall has ever been moved. It's very original, but it is an old, authentic home.
Right.
And at that time, it still had the steam radiators. It had one heat zone. So that was it for 3 floors, one thermostat in the dining room, and the heat would clank away and do its magic. And it was just a nice old home. But this home down the street was top of the line, everything. Well, it turns out the assessor, when I went to the assessing office and showed him his property and mine, I said, do you know this property that burned? He goes, oh yeah, I'm really good friends with him. I said, well, you must be really good friends. I go, take a look at the assessment. And I said, go get me the card. And he got me the card and he brought it to me. And what I discovered is he and his brother, so 2 brothers worked in the assessing office, both doing residential properties with the responsibility of checking each other's work, even though the city had a conflict of interest policy. So that wasn't so cool. So these brothers had gone to the home and simply forgot to update that the house was completely rebuilt on the inspections. It still was listed as a 1955 home. So it was built in 1925, and they had the estimate datedness of the house, the effective year built, as 1955, and it had been 100% rebuilt in 2014. So that kind of got me going, and I said, you know what? I want an abatement. I want it fixed. They were very resistant to help me, so I started going into the assessing office and doing all kinds of research. And I was using these computers in there. And at that time, the women who worked there were very friendly. They were very accommodating. They were really supportive. And I started realizing that the chief who ran the office only worked a couple days a week. He was nowhere to be found. And the assessors were off doing God knows what. So, I would actually walk in, and one of the assessing ladies would make these comments, which would make me laugh. She'd go, oh, our fearless leader just showed up, Laurie. And so, because the boss was never there, and I'd go in so many days doing my research and asking questions and pulling files to check stuff. So I started getting a feel that they really weren't handling these property assessments correctly. And then I started realizing that one of the assessors, one of these brothers, I believed, was not even going out and doing assessments properly.
Let me guess. He was going off to McDonald's and sitting off on the side and sleeping.
He was going off to the rail trail in the parking lot at the Holiday Inn and sitting in the back and sleeping. So he was signing out on a whiteboard that he was going to inspect properties, and he wasn't going to any properties. And that's why his work seemed so incomplete and undocumented. And I tried to go to management and in the city, and they said, hey, no, nobody complains about an employee. We don't accept that. That's just unacceptable. We don't listen to it. So
there's another one of those, shut up and pay your property taxes and pay their salaries. They're not working, but shut up. Yeah.
They had no system for reporting. So I went to the Board of Aldermen meetings and I started giving my public input about everything's not right down there. And of course, the board was extremely offended. They felt it was very inappropriate for a citizen to detail what the problems were. And several times they said, you're not permitted to talk about an employee in the board meeting during public comment. And I said, I think I am. As a citizen, I think I have a right. But since you don't allow us to do it privately and there's no place to go, I guess I'm going to come here and do it publicly. That's the way you wanted it. Yeah. So I kept pushing for them to look at this guy's work, and they wouldn't. So I hired a private eye, and I had him follow the guy for a month. And that's how we figured out that he was going to these parking lots on the rail trail this trail system that runs along the river in Nashua into this Holiday Inn parking lot using his computer, scrolling through and doing stuff on his computer, napping in his car, smoking a cigarette, staying out for 3-4 hours, and then driving back to work, parking his car and going in with no documents of any work he produced. So I had my PI consolidate this really professional report, and my attorney dropped it off. I had an attorney helping me with a right to know request, sent it into the city. And the long and short, they looked at it and said, it's a big nothing sandwich. We don't even care. He gets extra time on his lunch break. He's his union contract permits him to have flex time, but he wasn't coming in early for work. And I was so concerned, actually, my PI was so concerned with this guy's work ethic. He said to me, there's just something really strange. I've never seen a more unmotivated person in my life. And he said, he's always got his computer, he's doing stuff. Why don't you go to the police station, check and see if there's anything unusual about the guy? So I went, and I remember going in there, and this very young, bouncy girl, I said, I want to try and find this record on a city employee. And I need you to go back like 10 years. And can you, and she goes, well, what are you looking for? I said, something that an employee shouldn't do. Something that would make you go, that's not right. Something that just strikes you as the wrong thing for a public servant. I said, and here's the guy's name, and here's the years I want you to search, and start at this point. Well, she comes back within like 5 minutes, and she's got these like ponytails, and she says, I said, did you find something? She goes, oh, yes. I said, is it good? She goes, oh, yes. I said, I'm like, can I have it? She goes, no, you have to come back tomorrow and pay $5. The supervisor has to just stamp it off, and then it's yours. So the next day I go, I get it. Well, the guy, as a city employee, had been caught twice with like 8,000 porn images on his computer. So during the day when he was in the office, he was porn surfing for hours a day. And the second time he was caught, the woman in the office who caught him felt that he had child porn on his computer. So it became a police incident. And they they took the computer, they hauled him into the police station, they confiscated his home computer. They ended up determining that it wasn't, but he was on these websites with very young girls. And his whole discussion with the police was astonishing, because he didn't have a lawyer present, and he said, yeah, I'm a porn addict. I'm hooked on it. I love going on websites and disguising myself as a bisexual woman. And I get the best hits with women girls when I do that. And even though they sound young, I thought they were 18. And, I do this for hours a day at work. Spills the beans to the cops. And he wasn't let go back then when it occurred.
He wasn't fired?
No. So they kept him. And what happened is, after those two incidences, it drove him to take his personal computer to work and then go out into these parking lots for each day and, do the surfing he wanted to do in a parking lot, take naps, hang out, and do nothing. And not many places of employment will let you carry in and out your personal laptop. A lot of businesses have policies against that, bringing your own.
You don't want to bring in a virus or, any kind of threat on it. You don't use
this guy always carried it on his bag, carried it in and out, had it in his car, would set it up when we were watching him and doing his stuff. And so I think it's quite possible he just took his habit to the parking lot and left every day where nobody could monitor him. So, long and short, I just found out in January, he left the city. They let him stay, and he got his 20 years and his full retirement, and he just retired. That's the kind of situation that, as a taxpayer and just a common sense citizen, I don't think there's any room for that. So when that happened, I went, and the city decided to say, hey, we're not even going to investigate the guy. There's nothing wrong. I went to the Nashua Police Department, and I asked them to investigate him potentially embezzling money and fraudulent recording his time on his timesheets for work. He was being paid mileage to run around and do inspections. And I believed he was submitting false mileage reports. So the police agreed to open the report, unknown to me. Unknown to me at that time, really, the city strongly disliked me. I didn't realize how much they disliked.
Why?
So they strongly disliked me. And, you know, the police, when I went to them with a friend and we sat down and we told them everything that was going on, they said, okay, we need like 2 weeks and we'll get back to you to decide if we are going to do an investigation. And oh, by the way, we're super independent. We don't, you know, we work completely out, you know, outside of City Hall. We don't communicate with them. We operate on our own, which I didn't really fully believe that was how it was going to go, because police budgets are paid by the mayor and the city, right? So
Correct.
You get your funding there. Well, when the report finally came out from the police, in less than 24 hours of us meeting with them, what is the first thing the chief and a captain did? They went to the mayor's office the very next day and had a meeting with the mayor and the director, who was actually involved in the under investigation, to inform them that I had come in to request this investigation. And I think really what happened almost immediately, it was decided that the investigation would be about me and not about this guy. So I could tell very quickly that it had turned. And within couple months of the investigation, the police showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon. I wasn't here. My husband took the message. I ended up stopping into the police station to see what they wanted. They issued a warning to me saying that I'd be subject to arrest if I had any communication with assessors outside of their office in City Hall. So if I saw an assessor outside the office, I was not allowed to talk to him or ask him any information or engage in any kind of communication, or I would be subject to arrest. I was shocked. I was shocked. And I was scared.
Insane. You're a taxpayer, you're a citizen, you're an inhabitant, and you're there checking up on an employee that works for the city that you're observing is not doing their job because, oh, by the way, you're in the office, 3 days out of 5, if not more. And you're looking at this and they turn it around and pin it on you?
Yeah, it was. And then we go into the next year and they're accusing me of impostoring. The police report came out like 4 or 5 months later. And when I look at the police report, they had contacted the police and said that I was impostoring a city employee showing up at people's properties to do like home inspections. Totally false. The police did dispel that completely, but that got reported to the police. Then they accused me of impersonating a city employee again when I reached out and called the vendor to find out the status of this software program that was going on in the assessing office. They showed up at a board meeting, top management, and the mayor and the city councilor were sitting there, and the top manager goes to the microphone and says, Laurie Ortolano, basically has committed a crime. She's under criminal investigation for impersonating a city employee. Public announcement at the microphone. I was really disgusted, really disgusted. Then when all of this assessing stuff was going sideways and they had issued the new numbers, I decided to work with some senior citizens called me and needed help with their abatements. And 2 of them were very senior women who said, we can't go out. COVID was still going on and people were frightened. And they were like, would you, help us with our abatement and bring it to City Hall? And I said, I can be your representative. If you sign a line on your abatement form, I can be your representative and I can help you put the form together. I can give you the comparable properties and I can take it into City Hall to get it stamped. So these 2 women signed off. I emailed the city, tried to get the city to respond to these abatements for these women, but they didn't like me. So they didn't respond for 5 days. So on a Friday, I went to City Hall I was let in. They had a little guard lady there. I told her what I was doing. She says, no problem. You can go right in. Told her I was going to go to the administrative services office to get this application for seniors, dates, time stamped, because abatement applications are quasi-legal documents. They can spawn off into lawsuits or appeals that go to the superior court to get your property assessment fixed. So they have to be date, time stamped. So nobody was working. Shocking. City Hall was like empty at 9:30 in the morning. The administrative service office door was closed. There wasn't a soul in there. Then I went to the mayor's office, locked and closed and lights off. I was just looking for somebody who had a date time stamp. So I went up to the legal office and they were open. One attorney was in there. The girl came to the door and I said, hey, is, attorney so-and-so there? And she said, yes. And so I opened the door and I just went in and I called for him and he came out of his office and I explained what I had. And I said, can you just date time stamp these? He refused. He said, no, you're trespassing. You can't be here. This is wrong. I said, look, you have no process to get these done. I sent them to the city 5 days ago. Nobody responded. I just want to get them stamped. He said, no, you have to leave. So I went, I said, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to go into the entry hallway of the legal office and I'm going to wait there. I'm going to sit and wait there. So I did. And they called the police and 5 cruisers came and they.
5 cruisers?
5. You'd think it was a domestic violence. 5 cops. They all come running up the stairs. And there I am. I was completely peaceful. The deputy counsel shows up late to work, of course. She sees me. She comes up to me. She looks at me and she goes, you're threatening and hostile. That's what she says to me. I said, give me a break. I'm not doing anything. I find you threatening and hostile. She started running around the office screaming that I was threatening and hostile. And then she asked the clerk to open the windows because I was a COVID health threat. I had a mask on. There was no screening in City Hall. I was properly attired, but she accused me of being a COVID health threat and demanded the windows be open. So when the cops came, they talked to me and some of them, a couple of them were like an older guy who seemed to be a sergeant said, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And so they went over to the deputy lawyer and she says, I could hear her. She says, I don't want anything to happen. I don't want to trespass or anything. Just tell her she has to make an appointment to come to City Hall. Well, the truth was I didn't need an appointment to do what I did. I was let in peacefully by the lady. No problem, no laws broken. Well, then 3 days later, the city goes out to the newspapers and says, we're going to see about this. She was told she didn't trespass, but I'm rethinking it and we're going to see about this. So long and short, a month later, they issued a warrant and arrested me for trespassing. And I ended up it was terrible. It was shocking. It was an arrest for trespassing. And it was a misdemeanor, $2,500 fine. I turned myself in. I was handcuffed and put in jail and had to wait for the bailiff to come and the bond bailiff to come and post my $40 bond to get me out of jail so I could go home. And it was just, that's when I really realized how heavily and how hard they were working to arrest me. They wanted me to have a record. And it never stopped. I mean, they continued in 2022. The city attorney, I went up to City Hall one day. I was just standing in the 3rd floor hallway. He opened the door, I think, to go to lunch. He was angry. And he said, leave now or I'll have you arrested. And I was shocked. I said, I'm just standing in the hallway. I'm actually talking to your clerk on the phone about getting an email. He screamed, I'm not allowed to call in. He had a total fit, saying I was going to be arrested. I was frightened. I called the police. I made him come to City Hall to respond so I could tell my side of the story. I was afraid he would just do it. Yeah, and the police came and they listened and they kind of said, this is ridiculous. Go home. We're going to go in there with a sergeant. We're going to have a talk with him. Mm-hmm. And they went in and met with the corporation counsel for the city, Steve Bolton. And they said, what went on? Show us what went on. And he walked them upstairs, and she said she was in this hallway. And they said, well, it's not a secured hallway. It's a call.
Yeah.
And the cop says, well, who can be in this hallway? And he says, everyone but her. And then, and then the cop says, and then we heard she called into your office. He said, yes. And she can't do that. And the officer said, well, who can call into your office? And
Everybody
he said, everyone but her. She's not allowed. And he said, well, you can't do that. And they know, the police report, that incident came out very favorably for me. Thank God. Took 10 days to get it, but you never know what you're going to get with these reports. These are city officials who control the budgets of the police department. So I was very fortunate that the police report came out in my favor, but this corporation counsel remains here. And in another show, I'm going to share with you the 100 pages of police records that this corporation counsel has in his history of alcohol problems and temperament, problems trying to arrest innocent citizens. It's just,
wow.
it's this guy.
Thank you for sharing that, because that is, I didn't know everything on that story. I am flabbergasted. It's mind blowing. I just want to say thank you. And absolutely, I want you back to finish up this story. My second guest is here. Hang around and listen, because Maureen, I think, has similar stories to you. Thank you, Laurie, and bless you for fighting the way you are. And that's figuratively speaking, for those that want to always find something bad about us, and pushing back on the bad guys and doing the right thing, because that's where we all are at this point. We have no branch of government at all.
No, we don't. We really, I've switched 180 degrees on my faith in government, the judicial system. The whole thing is just really shifted me, as a citizen and somebody who's a lot more active now. And I think a lot of older people have to step up and get involved, because it's kind of brutal out there right now. It
is. All right, my dear. Thank you so much. I'll be talking with you soon. Hang around if you'd like, and have a fabulous rest of the night, and stay safe.
I will. You too.
Thanks, Laurie.